this is Vicki Robinson, and today I wanted to walk you through this wonderful page by my fabulous creative team member, Ann Herbert. She used the Miss Ella kit for this, and I think what attracts me to this page is how much rich texture she obtained. She was able to obtain, but it didn't detract from what her focal point image was, this very cool picture of this egret in this sort of swampy water here. She managed to have a lot of elements on the page and yet create something that doesn't feel like you're distracted from what it is she wanted you to see. And she did that by making sure that there was a decent amount of white space on the page, and she did that by layering elements to create texture and depth and interest. Let's sort of walk through this a little bit so you can see what I mean. Oh, you know, the other thing I wanted to show you is an interesting technique she used for this photograph. I'll get to that in a moment, but let's take a look at how she did this. She basically added and sometimes duplicated many of the layers of paint that I provided in the kit. And I want you to notice in particular that not only did she leave white space, but she sort of grounded the page by making sure that the paint elements flowed from one side to the other, that they're touching the edges of the page. And that gives you a sense of foundation. It's not something that you're consciously aware of, but it's something that helps the viewer feel that the page is connected to everything. So that's one tip for you, besides trying to leave some white space. And I know that's really hard for some people to do, but not only trying to leave some white space, but when you add a lot of color and a lot of texture, if you can sort of repeat some of that color and texture in different parts of the page, yet tie them all together, you'll have a page that feels like it flows. It feels like it's good composition. And she's done a very, very good job of accomplishing that here. The other thing that she did is she added a couple of these they're sort of mixed media transfers. They come from a mixed media piece that I did that had lots and lots of texture. And if I zoom in just a little bit here for you, you can see there's a little more texture here. You can see I think this was bubble wrap I put on that page, and there's some gesso on here. So although they don't detract from the page, they're different colors than the original paint colors that I included. So they're adding a little more I'm sorry, try that again, a little more depth and a little more interest to the page. She also added this favorite alpha stamp of mine. I think we're going to see that again in a minute. She also did something, well, let me add the photo back so that you can sort of see what I mean here. Where is that photo? Oh, did I pass it? Yeah, I did. Here's the photo in the mask, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But she also added a frame, that triple frame that I included, using this same out of bounds effect I showed you in another video. This is the most simplest application of this, and for this page it works really fine. She wasn't trying to get complicated here. She just added this simple little out of bounds technique to make it appear as if the egret's neck is over the frame while the rest of the body is behind it. She placed the frame on top of her photo, and then, as we did in the other video, she added the layer mask and then used a black hard or soft round brush and just masked away that area where the neck was to make it appear that it is peeking through. If that interests you, look for my other video on out of bounds. Now Anne's continued to add elements to her page just to add some more interest and to use her creativity. She probably added these splatters at the end because I think that's what I would have done, and have a feeling she would have done that as well. She also added some of these little stars here, and one thing I wanted to point out about these, there's a little blue one here and a pink one here, is that many times when you add elements to your page, it's not necessarily important that they have any meaning. They're just adding some interest. They're just adding texture. They're all adding these yummy layers that give the viewer something to look at. Let's see what else she's got here. Added this little scribble there And she's used the sticker here a couple of times, and that stitching with some pins. That's really cute. Those little buttons, I like those a lot. Added more color here underneath, over here underneath the sticker, just to sort of give the page a finishing look. And I wanted to point out something else she did here with this paint. Have I missed any of these layers? Make sure they're all there. I wanted to point out something else that she did with the paint. See, here's with this paint, without this paint layer, and here's with this paint layer. Here's with this, out this paint layer, sorry, try that again. Here's without this paint layer, with this paint layer. You see it sort of subtly changed the color here. Here's without this paint layer, here's with this paint layer. And I want to talk to you about why stylistically that was a really great thing to do design-wise. She's got this whole sense of movement from one edge of the page to the other. And by adding these paint, so sorry, it was this one and this one and this one. By adding them on top of her image like that, you know, they're not very color heavy, so they don't really detract from the image itself, but they give the impression of everything sort of fitting in together. This paint sort of melds into this water here. This blue paint melds into the back of the picture here. It's all creating this sense of oneness. It's a sense of oneness. Where have I got? Oh my goodness. But do you understand what I mean? It's creating this flow and this sense of cohesiveness. Maybe that's what it was I was trying to say. And I want to point out again that just because the designer has provided you, say, this paint, let's take a look at this paint here. And it's actually very faint, but if I move it around, you can see it's rather big. And just because the designer provided it that way doesn't mean that you have to leave it that way. I'm going to put this back where it was. What Anne did was she masked out the portions using the layer mask, as we did before, using the layer mask to mask away portions that didn't really add anything to her image. So feel free to do that. The designer expects you to do that with her products. It's her design and her products, but she's meaning for you to make your pages your own for what speaks to you. So don't hesitate to do that when the opportunity arises, or if you feel something just isn't working. And here on the side, she added some more, another one of those stamps. And I think another thing I wanted to point out is here how you see here and here these stamps, the stamps are going off the page. That also adds interest. It's okay to leave the stamp here, but you see how much more interesting it looks when it's sort of off the page there. Just little tips here to help you create some pages that you're really, really going to love. Let me go back up here and see what else she added. She's got a cute little pin and a little bit of gesso. And then she went ahead and added some of the butterflies, another sticker, and her title. And then again, she's used a layer mask that said the word art actually said Precious One, and she just masked out the word one. So I hope you can see from this how she built this beautifully cohesive page that has lots and lots and lots and lots of things on it, but none of those things detract from the overall image. So now let's take a closer look and see if we can figure out what Anne has done with her very cool egret photo. Let me go ahead and hide the rest of these layers here for you. And we can see when we look at her layers that she has a color balance adjustment layer. We can talk about that one later, but she's got two copies of the same image here. Let me just move one of these over here. She's got two copies of the same image layered on top of each other, and she's obviously applied some sort of photo mask, but we don't see any photo mask here. So let's see if we can figure out what she did. And also, I kind of want to point out that she didn't have a layer mask, photo mask in this kit. I didn't give any photo masks. Well, here's another way you can extend the use of your kits, and you can be very creative. You can use paint blobs or gesso blobs or any kind of irregular shape to make a photo mask. You don't have to actually have one provided to you. And I am, now that I'm looking through the stuff in this kit, I have of course I can't know exactly what she used, but I have a feeling maybe she used Miss Gesso. Let me put this back where it was. And I've gone ahead and opened a new document, and I have her photo here. And I've also moved over a copy of her finalized version so we can use it as reference. I'm willing to bet that she probably used this gesso. And I think that because if you look, there's some hard edges here, some stronger edges, and all of the paint that I provided in the kit are really soft, flowy, watercolor kinds of things. The only thing that had a little more texture to it was the gesso. So I'm just taking a wild guess. I'll be interested to hear from her after this what it was, but I'm just going ahead and pull this gesso over on here. Actually, I can see right away I nailed it, because look at this. Oops, sorry about that. Let's lock this layer here. You can use this little icon here at the top to lock a layer so it doesn't move around. I don't grab it accidentally. If I move this gesso over here, check that out. Really is really close to the size of this. So I actually nailed it on the first try. Good job, Vicki. So what I'm going to show you is that you can feel free to transform, to change the shape and size and proportions of a paint blob or even a gesso blob without worrying about losing quality, because in this case we're going to use it as a mask for the photo. You wouldn't probably want to do this on an element such as a ribbon or a frame or something else where it needs to look real. This is just going to serve as a backdrop for our photo. So I'm going to Command or Control T to get my transform tool, and I'm just going to start to manipulate this gesso until I have it covering the portions of the image that I actually want to focus on. And I'm just going to make this really narrow. See, this is relatively narrow. As a matter of fact, I could probably super cheat. Oh my goodness. I can not only super cheat, I can super cheat really well. Look what she did here. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit. Now I do see that this tail portion here is actually facing in the other direction. So I would also think that she probably duplicated this gesso. Command or Control J, make a new copy, edit, transform, flip horizontal. See that? See how that's meeting that? So in order to cover the portions of the photo that she wanted to, she made a duplicate copy. Darned if I didn't, boy, I am so good. I'm so impressed with myself, huh? Make this a tiny bit bigger here. Where's that handle? And bring this down a little bit. Gee, I've actually ended up replicating her mask really, really well. Now she would have merged these two layers together, and then she would have either clipped her photo to them. I'll show you if I put the photo image on top of the mask, and then do, it is on the Mac, it's an Option. Hold down the Option key and then hover your mouse in between the two layers. It's an Alt key on a PC. And then you can see that gosh, we did a really good job of sort of duplicating that right off the bat. So I'm going to actually call this good. I think I've done that really well. So I could now merge this down, or I'll show you another one of my favorite tricks. Instead of merging this layer down, let me do that here. Right mouse click and say merge down. Instead of doing that, I'll undo. One of my favorite tricks that I use quite often is to do it the other way around. I'm going to Command or Control click on the thumbnail of the gesso layer, and you can see over here on my image that I now have marching ants around my gesso. Once I've got that, I'm going to make sure that my image is the layer that's selected, and I'm going to do Command or Control J to make a, remember we did this in our out of bounds, to make a new layer from what I have selected. So I'm going to do that. And then if I hide these two, you see I've accomplished the same thing. It's really two different ways to accomplish the same thing. Doesn't make any difference at all. Okay, we've done a pretty good job. Hers was a little narrower, but that's okay. Let's take a look at what this looks like on on her page. Let's move it over here, move it in place. I'm going to put it right on top of her image. Darn, I did good. And then let's turn on all the rest of the layers here, except for my preview here so you can see it. As you can see right away, if we hide hers, here's my little group here, if we hide hers, we actually did a really good job. Now, she wanted to emphasize the photo a little bit, so that's why she made the duplicate copy, Command or Control J to make another copy of that image. You can see immediately it added a little darkness and depth to that image. And then her last step, this is where I said if you looked up here, she added a color balance layer. Let's take a look at that. If I make this active here and look at this, you can see in the properties, she's actually modified the colors a little bit. She's moved these sliders, this -26 and this is a +4. So let's go ahead and do that here. I'm going to hide this. Going to come up here and click on my topmost layer and come to the adjustment layer icon, and I'm going to add a color balance. And the reason that she did this is she wanted the colors to blend a little bit more with the paint that's here. So I think I said like a -26, right? -26. And if you're watching, it's almost at -26, and then this was a +4. I'm just going to type in +4. Well, no, I'm not going to type in a +4. How about if I just type in 4? There you go. So I think that's accomplished what she did. She's just trying to get the photo, the image to blend a little bit more into the colors that were already there. So there you have it. We have taken a look at what absolutely beautiful, flowy, sort of ethereal nature of a page that Anne has created, and we have learned how to use gesso or paint as a layer photo mask for your images. I hope you've enjoyed this walkthrough of Anne Herbert's wonderful page using the Miss Ella kit. Thanks for watching.